By now, you probably know that although Hannah's family have made contact with her, and despite her being told about her father's death, Hannah doesn't want to return home to her family. Sydney Kobayashi wrote this on Facebook. At this time, my mother and I have not physically seen Hannah. We do not have actual proof of where she is, other than that she is somewhere in Mexico. We have only spoken to her over the phone, and she was allegedly found safe with Laurie, an estranged aunt, but at this time she does not wish to return to us.
She's not coming back.
I don't think Sydney is overstating things by saying this feels like a betrayal. Do you? If Hannah's family have been concerned about her, she doesn't seem to feel the same way about them. Why? How do families become estranged?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, this story is certainly taking kind of a disturbing turn, isn't it? If Hannah's situation made us sympathetic to start off with, it's hard to remain sympathetic now. And imagine how Sydney feels. Her father took his life because he was so distraught over the actions of his sister. You know, one of them being a reckless, wayward daughter. Well, what about his other daughter? So it has to be hard for Sydney to not feel not only betrayed, but resentful given the situation that she's in now. And this begs the question, why did the Kobayashis become estranged to begin with? I mean, the aunt has now become estranged as well. And look at this comment from Sydney. I do think it's tempting to believe Hannah is self-orphaning with glee, a little like Pinocchio ditching his family for Pleasure Island, where he, remember the spiel, he transforms into a donkey while drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. But the roots of estrangement are complicated and often go back a long way. Although addiction could be a key issue here, and it's often a key reason for family estrangements, where a relative literally chooses Pleasure Island and substances over their own family, over their own flesh and blood. In this analysis, we're going to examine the roots of estrangement beyond addiction. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Welcome to the many of you who have subscribed. I do think that what the conversation we're having around this case is valuable, because it's not only crimes and criminals that tear holes in the fabric of society. It can also be the people closest to us. Their behavior may not be criminal, but it nevertheless can be very hurtful and very harmful. Estrangement is something that used to be a long-standing cultural secret, and this is finally bringing it out of the closet. And in that sense, I think it's a valuable and meaningful conversation. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. You can also like, share, leave a comment. And if you appreciate my coverage of this case, you can also hit the thanks button. And let's get started. So we're going to be dealing with the roots of estrangement. What do you think they are? Before I provide some information on it, what do you think are the causes of estrangement? Do you have any personal experience in that regard? Do you have any theories in that regard? Well, doesn't it appear that Hannah's estrangement from her father stood out more than anything else? By some accounts, Hannah and her father had been estranged for years. The classical reasons for estrangement are as follows. Emotional maltreatment, that's a common factor. Mismatched expectations. Parents and children have different expectations for family roles and relationships. Clash of values, mental health issues, traumatic events, disagreements. Parents may not agree with their child's choice or their political views, gender identity, religion, etc. Neglect. Neglect can be a factor in estrangement. Bullying, destructive behavior, and then also substance abuse. Another factor that can add tension to the mix is overlording parents. And I think this is particularly true of Asian families. I lived and worked for a couple of years in South Korea. Also had a girlfriend that lived in Singapore. And often their expectations and the roles they impose on their progeny can have sort of a crushing pressure, can be like a crushing burden. And just generally in the world today, I don't know if people realize it, studies show that parents are far more involved in their adult children's lives and in their grandchildren's than in previous generations. And I think social media actually allows that to take place in an even broader way than ever before. And so adults who have their parents sort of getting involved in their affairs may feel that they're being marginalized, ignored, hyper-criticized, or scapegoated. It might be a case that they're getting too much attention or too little attention, especially compared to perhaps another family member. Now, there are at least 3 things to consider when we deal with estrangement. Number 1, it's more common than you think. According to Psychology Today, research indicates that more than a quarter of adults in America have been estranged for long periods, while 43.5%, that's almost half, reported being estranged at some point, according to one study. That's almost half of all American adults. In the United Kingdom, these figures appear even higher. So can I ask you a question? Are you estranged from a family member, or do you know someone who is? Number 2, most adults blame emotional strife for estrangement. And so according to one study, I think in the United Kingdom, Lucy Blake found 50 to 70% of adult children attribute their estrangement to emotional strife. Number 3, most estrangement, more than 1 in 4, is, get this, from fathers. That's children towards fathers. And that does seem to be the case here between Hannah and her father. Only Hannah, Sydney, and Brandy, Hannah and Sydney's mother, know what the true state of affairs was in the Kobayashi family, specifically between father and daughter. But in broad strokes, it's hard to imagine there wasn't some degree of neglect, because if you think about it, how do you marry someone in secret without a family member hearing something through the grapevine? This is assuming there is a relatively close relationship to begin with. Of course, young adults demand freedom and freedom from supervision, and it's possible in this space Hannah made some dodgy decisions and has been exercising some perhaps questionable lifestyle choices. One also has to ponder the significance of Hannah texting her family that she was scared just prior to disappearing, and perhaps intentionally leaving her phone behind at LAX. What seemed like a series of unfortunate events now seems perhaps more like spite, especially given Ryan Kobayashi's death and Hannah's persistence in remaining a deliberately sort of missing person. I mean, not even her father's death appears to have softened Hannah's heart or her resolve, although, if I can make a prediction, it will soften with time. In my opinion, this has gone beyond the point of scoring points or asserting herself. Hannah's family do deserve an explanation, because they've lost someone else too, someone besides Hannah. Sydney has lost her father, and that may turn out to be harder to forgive, even if she wants to. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.